Everybody here, can you hear
There
me?
you are. I can hear you and I can see you. Yeah. Perfect.
There we go. All right. Make sure I got my water.
Awesome. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to trickle in. And then we will be all set.
Looks good and loud and clear.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. And I remembered my charger this time.
Okay, excellent. That'll be perfect. How are you doing? How has your week been so far? I know it's only Tuesday, but
yeah, no, it's good. It's an apt week to do how to triple your price point because I just got done showing an $8.5 million off market house to a client, and I just about to send off a $7 million offer. So,
oh wow, yes, no,
so,
definitely,
so
definitely a good week for that.
Yeah, not bad. It's weird market, sluggish. We got to find them. I'll talk about this in a minute, but it's like, we got to go find houses. So one of my agents, we drew up a list, and he was just calling and found this guy off market. To find a house for a buyer we've been actively writing offers, but it's just the market lacks no inventory. We're still lacking inventory, and so.
But yeah, I think it's one of those things where it's like people just tend to have to ride out the wave a little bit, and you'll have some great tips and tricks for everyone coming into the room today, and so exciting stuff.
For sure.
Let's see. Okay, we'll give it just 1 or 2 more minutes. People tend to come into as we start talking and whatnot, but hello, Francis.
Hey, Francis.
How are you doing today? All right.
Well, just tell me when you want me to kick off, and I'll get going.
Okay, sounds good. I will have you kick off right about now. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know there will be more of you as you come in, but we have Batra here today from Trajectory Real Estate. And so he will be talking about how to triple your price point. Ian and Trajectory, they've done some phenomenal work in the last year, and Ian will, I'm sure, tell you more about himself. And so I will let him get right on into it. So, Ian, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm Ian Batra. If you don't know who I am, I serve the Silicon Valley market, and we also do business down on the Santa Cruz coastline, or the Northern California coastlines. So we do coastal properties as well as Silicon Valley properties. My company and our business, we sell a variety of price points. We do everything from, entry level for our market, which is probably $500,000-$600,000 for like a 1-bedroom condo, up to $10+ million properties. And we do in my career, like everybody else, when I was a brand new agent, decade and a half ago, I would sell every property that comes my way. And to this day, we still have a philosophy. I say I go where the client needs me to go. So I don't shy away at any business, especially in today's market when, to be honest, there's just less opportunities out there for everybody, less transaction count period in the marketplace. So I would happily sell a 1-bedroom condo, or just as much as I'll sell an $8 or $10 million house, or in the case some of the deals we're working on a big winery deal down in Carmel Valley. So that's a many $1 million, 7-figure purchase. But the bigger deals tend to be more complex, and they tend to be fewer and farther between for everybody. As far as the market in general, and since today is called How to Triple Your Price Point, what I figure is I'll go through kind of my techniques and things that I would say if your goal is to triple your price point or just to do more expensive properties in general, then I'm going to give you sort of my roadmap on how I did it, and what I think somebody can implement starting today. But I always say to break into doing whatever your average price point. If your average price point's and everyone who comes on here is in different markets. Your average price point might be 300,000 and you want to go to 800,000, or your average price point might be $1 million and you want to go to 5 million. It's a progress and it takes time. So when I'm coaching an agent who has an active business and they're selling properties in a certain price point, we don't want to give that up. It's not like one day, and that's a mistake some agents do, is they try to rebrand themselves all luxury, and they do a whole thing and put luxury on everything, and they end up alienating their customer. And at the end of the day, as I'd say in today's market, I would happily sell any property because that's what keeps the lights on and keeps the bills paid. Now, and I'm fortunate at this point where I have a strong clientele that calls me and that we work in like the luxury and ultra luxury price points. So, first things first, like I would say, if your goal is to raise your price point, you have to look at your general business and marketing plan. And if anybody was on the one I taught about how to build $1 million GCI business, everything techniques I taught there are the basis before you even say, hey, I'm going to go sell a luxury property. And I'll just use a quick example why. So one of the things we require like our trajectory agents to participate in is our Sphere of Influence past client marketing program, which is, we send clients your database, people who would recognize who you are. They get a monthly mailer. We want them called at least once a quarter. And then we try to do two events a year, like something like we're working on like a pie giveaway, something where you create like a face-to-face interaction with people who know you and recognize you and would know who you are. And I'll use an example. I just this morning got back, or was rushing back here from a showing for a client I've been shopping houses for. We've been writing offers in the $7 to $8 million range. We wrote an offer on a house, and then the client didn't go forward on the house because he couldn't do what he wanted with the property. There was some additions he wanted to do, and the property was already maxed on how it was built. So we had to move back. But the client came to me because I actually have known the client 20 plus years, long before I sold real estate, probably 25 years, met him at the gym. And when I created my Sphere of Influence marketing list, I just took everybody I know and put it on a list. And so one day I got a text message from the client, and it literally says, "Oh, I didn't know you sold in Saratoga." Like I grew up in the town Saratoga. I sold lots of houses in Saratoga. There's no reason he wouldn't know. He could but because these people are our clients, people who know us, they aren't watching our business and they're not in our business, so they don't know what we do. So he gets a mailer to his house, which it's literally are people who would recognize my name and know who I am. And everybody I've ever sold a house to or sold a house for that's still local, and then I'll then get this mailer. So he texts me, he says, "I didn't know you sold in Saratoga." He's like, "Can I call you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." So we hop on the phone, and he's like, he has a nice house. He has like a 3,000 square foot house, and in the same town, and he wants to go to like a 5,000+, maybe 7,000 square foot house. So he calls me, goes, "Oh, well, we're looking at this house." He goes, we saw this open house. We don't have an agent. Can you represent us? And so, fast forward now, this is maybe 6 months ago. We've been looking and writing offers and working on stuff. And then, but it's basically, probably when all said and done, it may be an $8.5 million buy with a just under $5 million sell. So listing. If I wasn't doing what I'm supposed to be doing anyway and mailing people who know me, I wouldn't have even got that business. So it's one of those simple things. It's like the first thing to do, like you don't want to just put in this big plan to say, hey, I'm going to go do luxury if you don't have your normal business, what you should be doing no matter what, in order. So always keep your house in order first and don't neglect any of that while you're trying to get into luxury. But the thing about luxury in general too is it's a different like mentality or mindset within the clientele. And a lot of people who try to start to work with luxury buyers have to change their perspective a little, because most of the time, if you're getting into luxury price point, most of these people, and there's extenuating circumstances. There's people who relocate to another area and stuff where people are more motivated. But most of the time, I'd say 80-90% of your luxury clientele don't have to do a transaction. They have some reason that they have a desire to do a transaction. So everybody I've ever sold a house to in the $5+ million range typically already owned a house that was already a nice, like decent house that they could stay in for the foreseeable future. And when they went and bought a luxury home, they went to buy this luxury home because they had a desire for a bigger house and the ability to buy the bigger house. But that changes the way people motivate and make offers on homes, and how the deal is negotiated when you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have to buy a house. Whereas a lot of times when you're dealing with more entry-level buyers and people of that sort, when you're dealing with more luxury buyer or entry-level buyers, their motivation to do the transaction is different, because if they don't have a house, or they say they're in an apartment, or they're in a rental house and their landlord gave them notice, whatever the reason, they have a motivation and desire to get into a house, so they're more likely to compete in these like multiple offer situations. Whereas I've had luxury buyers, who go back and forth, and then they, fight about $50,000 when there's absolutely no reason to fight about $50,000. Like the affordability for the seller to just let the $50,000 go, or the buyer to put the extra $50,000, these people could just throw that money out of their pocket, no problem. It's probably sitting in their checking account. So I think that's kind of one of the components that changes how you negotiate. And so the interpersonal communications of dealing with higher end clientele too, you're playing to their egos, to their emotions, and you're selling on a different level than, hey, I just need a house. The other interesting note, sort of from a mindset standpoint, and I had the benefit of growing up in a more luxury area, but don't let that be a reason. And again, I grew up sort of middle of the area, so I grew up in a higher end town. But some friends of mine their parents had much bigger, much more beautiful houses than I grew up in. But then again, there were also more modest houses than my parents' house. So sort of in the middle of the road. But that sort of exposure and understanding. And I remember the first time it was a perspective thing, because I would go to somebody else's house and go, oh, my parents' house isn't that great. And then someone else I'd meet would like be over the moon and think my parents' house was the most wonderful house they'd ever seen. And it just gave me perspective in sort of the world of what is out there. So that's one thing I've noted with mentoring agents that have come and worked on my team, pre-trajectory and everything, too. When I was running other teams, sometimes I would take an agent out on a broker's tour, and they thought every house was incredible because their reference point was sort of, your classic suburban houses. That's what they'd always sold. So now I take them to a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house on an acre with a nice pool and views, and everything's incredible. And I'm looking at the house. I'm like, yeah, but the finishes are older, like this, and I'm noting, and I sort of learned. I'd say, well, you have to change your perspective, and so you have to know the inventory. So what I started doing with agents, well, if you want to raise your price point, you have to tour a lot of houses in the price point you want to rise to. So it's not like, and you don't want to wait till you have the client. You do need to learn the inventory and learn the houses. You got to understand what the architecture is like, because when you take on a client, they'll see whether or not you understand the product you're selling. So, and in today's world, I mean, people can pick any agent. They can change agents easily. And it's interesting because I've sold, $9 million houses to Zillow leads before. And I didn't sell a $9 million. It wasn't because Zillow is great. Zillow's okay. But all Zillow did was facilitate an initial phone call with the client. So the client calls. I could use one example. Client called about a $7 million house. I ended up selling him a $9 million house. But the client calls me, can I see this house? And, I talked to him a little bit on the phone, set the appointment, went and met the client, talked to him for a little while. I think, after that initial meeting, it was clear to him that I understood the area and the houses. So I told him I actually had a listing. In this situation was great. I had a listing one street over. So I said, well, why don't we it wasn't ready to be viewed. And I said, why don't we drive by my listing? So I took him over the one street over. I said, this one's coming on the market. I don't think it's going to work for you, but I can always get you in it if you want. We talked a little about the listing. And then I went back and I dug up, 3 or 4 off-market properties that weren't on the MLS. Agents I know, other properties, took the client out, showed him 3 or 4 other properties in the marketplace. And then it set a tone where then he started texting me houses that were on the MLS saying, what do you think about this house? So it created, because he knew that I understood the inventory and understood the houses. Now he wanted the dialogue with me about the homes. He wanted my opinion on other houses. Otherwise, where most agents that would get a Zillow lead like that would lose the client, they'd go show the house. They'd be like, oh, I hope he likes me. And then they wouldn't follow up with anything. Maybe they created an okay impression, but not a compelling impression to where the client would want to come back and dialogue with you again about the home. So, it's just little things like that make the difference. And that's not created overnight. It takes practice. It takes understanding of inventory. It's sort of more advanced selling or selling at a higher level. So that's like the first tip. So you really know your inventory. But again, this takes some time. So I always use the warning, like, don't neglect your other business while doing this. It's something you have to do on top of. So broker's tour is a great way to do that. I've been touring, for the last decade. I've toured pretty regularly in the markets that I serve. And I don't always make it up for us. I serve like the Southern Silicon Valley primarily. So I take, that's Los Gatos, Saratoga, or more Los Altos. But I don't get up to like Palo Alto and some of those areas as often. So I will try to get up there maybe like once a month and tour there as well. Because there's crossover clientele, so you need to know your markets. And then same thing with the Santa Cruz coastline, some of our higher end beach homes and stuff. I'll go tour those so that I can get to know that inventory too, and just understand pricing. It's super important to know the pricing on the inventory. The other thing that you'll find too, when you know the inventory and a client calls you, it'll facilitate a conversation that's compelling to them. When you can say to the client, have you seen this house? And they say, no, I haven't. Oh, yeah, I went to the open house, and you dialogue back and forth. Or oftentimes, too, they'll call you about one specific house, and you say, there's this other house. I don't know if you've seen it. And they'll say, no, I haven't seen it. Okay, great. Why don't I show you both? And it's that becoming that sort of concierge technique to raise the bar with the clientele to get them to use. One example and your clients, you'll find too, when a client builds trust, especially at higher price points, once they start to trust you, mind that you've got to continue to perform on their behalf, then they just call you for everything. I have a client that calls me for about transactions he wants to do in Southern California, which I won't necessarily write on that. But he still calls me. He's like, hey, what do you think about this? It's happening multiple times. So, hey, Ian, can you? I've literally had people call me and say, I'm in, a client wanted to buy something in Malibu. And he's like, all the agents here are flakes. He's like, I need an agent like you. He's like, can you just do it? And I'm like, no, but let me find you somebody, and then I'll be involved in the transaction. I'm like, but same reason I hear, like, just how I go inventory and know my market backwards and forwards here. I don't know Malibu backwards and forwards. I like Malibu. I'm familiar enough to know a little bit about it, but not enough to sell it. We're real estate's a hyper local business, and we have to know and understand our inventory that we're selling. So this is kind of your first techniques: knowing your product, understanding your inventory, upping your sales skills in general, and really understanding what the clientele wants. But that's also not going to help you with the next important part, which is to procure the clients. So that's kind of where I'll go next. Is how do you find a luxury client? I used one example where just mailing people that I know that happen to be in that price point did result in clientele. But that's not going to give you a book of luxury business in whole. It just might get you a client here or there. By the time you procure a luxury client, and kind of as I started with all these touring, knowing the inventory, everything, if you were to procure a luxury client and you weren't ready to do that, the client probably wouldn't use you. So you have to be prepared to hold on to that client and have the skills to actually go through with the transaction. But the number one way that I have found and retained my luxury clientele is through networking, through social means. A lot of times when now you can back this up by farming and mailing. But one of the biggest mistakes, I think, an agent who tries to farm a luxury area is they do all the conventional ways that they would farm just any other neighborhood, which gets really expensive because I don't know in all your markets, but in my market, the luxury prices tend to have a lower turnover rate. So your postage, your print, and everything, if you're doing your classic mailers and flyers, is going to get expensive. So what we typically will do is have specialized lists. Again, a mailer is a lot more effective if I'm mailing somebody who already have some familiarity with my name. So we mail to people who are identified lists, or we build lists to people that we know and we've created over the years through open houses and through things. And then we're specifically mailing to people because we think, this person might sell one day, or they know who we are. So we mail them. What I think if your goal is to get into higher price points, then you have to have a way that you network and get to know more people to build a database of hiring people. So if you live in a neighborhood that's not a luxury area and all your friends aren't in a luxury market, and you don't spend a lot of time in activities or things where you're coming across people with more money, then your clientele is going to reflect the people that you're around. And that's fine. I have not lost my friends who are of more modest means. I still have great friends and I still spend time with all those friends. But in order to get a higher price point, I also created a book of friends that are wealthier. And those people, and all things being equal, people prefer to do business with people they know, like, and trust. So a lot of my higher end business has come from working from social engagements with people who then know and trust me, and then they hear, they know what I do, and so then they want to meet with me, and so then all those other things kick into gear. It's the knowledge of the market, the track record, all that comes into play when you're winning over the client. But the initial introduction is often made through a social engagement. So for me, I have friends who are luxury agents who are like car people. They have I have a friend who's in a Lamborghini club. It's not my thing. I like cars, but I'm not a car fanatic, and I don't have a collection of Lamborghinis or Ferraris or something. But I know people who that was their thing, and that's how they kind of had their club of wealthier people. For me, it's always been wine. So I'm a wine guy. I've got about a 1,500 bottle wine, and I learned. I got into wine before I ever sold a house and before I ever had much money, to be honest. I got into wine, but it just sort of paralleled and fit for me because I already had an interest and a desire to do things with wine. So when I would go do what I like to do, which is drink, high-end Burgundies, lo and behold, a lot of people who drink high-end Burgundies, because they're expensive, have a lot of money. So I ended up finding clientele, and I've gotten some really great business from just something I enjoy. So I always say, if you're going to do this for the social aspect, think about the things you like that the people in that group like with money, and then you could invest or apportion some of your income to essentially to create a social circle out of that. I've known people who join yacht clubs or boat clubs. But I wouldn't say go join, just like I say, don't go buy a Ferrari if you don't love Ferraris and try to join a car club, because you're going to be bored. It's probably not going to work. You're going to go hang out at the car club and you're not going to have anything to say about Ferraris. Same thing I said, don't start, don't suddenly be like, oh, I like to drink vodka, so I'm going to try to get into wine to learn, go to wine clubs. You're going to go hang out with wine people and you're not going to be into it. So pick something you're into. But I've also known agents that have done really well with they're into boats, so they joined the yacht club. And again, yacht club full of people with money. So golf's another great one. So I say, if you're going to do the social aspect, think about your own activities and things you desire. And then you can pick out a couple of them that I really like this. I haven't done this a lot. It kind of fits. And then you could go join, if you're into golf, you could go join a country club in the area where you want to sell houses that fits. And then you're like, okay, well, this is, this country club. Like if I go join the Saratoga Country Club or Rinconada down the street, if I want to get connected with more people in Los Gatos, I would go join, and I want to do it via golf. I would go join Rinconada, which is right down the street from my office. I would go join that country club. And then I just go play golf there two or three times a week. And I'd be a fourth. Hey, let me be a fourth, and I can go, and I'm going to be paired up with all kinds of local people who are looking to get paired up with other, who get paired up to make a 4-pack and go golf. And then through those connections, I'm going to have 9 holes or 18 holes of golf to meet and converse with somebody who probably lives in the area. And if they're a member of that country club, they most of the time have money. So then you're creating your clientele. And again, now you're creating a database. And that's where the sort of triple your price point thing, it's a long-term endeavor. There's no magic bullet to triple your price point overnight. It took me about 5 years of just scrapping through, doing whatever transactions, just old school, selling wherever I could, to where and this is from when I started in the business. And I said, I did everything. I knocked doors, I made phone calls, I just whatever it took to make money, because I was broke and I had no money. And so then, but all the while I was doing that, I sort of implemented this plan, because and it was a decision I knew from the get-go. No, I'm going to sell those properties. So to this day, and then to that day, I tell people, I'm like, well, we serve every client. We sell condos, we sell single families in the suburbs, we sell we sell luxury, we sell ultra luxury, we sell beach houses. It doesn't matter. We sell them all. We don't turn away a client. And that's sort of from that beginning when now I could potentially only sell luxury and live off luxury, because obviously the checks are bigger and I'm doing more of it than I used to. But when I was new, so I would never turn my back on that clientele. And also, I just believe in a diverse business. We're in a market right now too, where I have luxury buyers that would buy a house right this second, and there's almost no houses on the market, and the ones that are on the market are sitting there. Then they're all sitting there for a reason. So case in point, this morning I just got back from a showing. It was about I think the house worth about $8.5 million. One of my clients, we've been out shopping and looking. They haven't been able to secure a house they liked. Every house has some reason they're not buying it. And then me and one of my agents, he's a really good prospector for phone calls. So we ran a list, came up with about 50 houses that fit the client's criteria. So we can run it. We know by square footage, by everything else. So we ran clientele, and he just got on the dialer and just started calling these homeowners. And one of the guys picked up the phone, and he had actually been listed 5 years ago. The house didn't sell. So we met him without the client first. We went, met him, previewed the house. House was great. And he even said when he was listed, he had potential offers. They just weren't ready to part with the house emotionally for the price. So people wanted to offer lower, and they weren't going to sell it for less than a certain price. And they didn't, again, that same thing I talked about before, the clients didn't need to sell the house. So even today, the seller, we showed the house to my client this morning. They like it. So now we're going to start this negotiation, this negotiation sort of back and forth to see if we can arrive at a price. That's another thing about luxury transactions. They don't always come together. I've had them fall apart, so you're working, and they're a higher price point, but you're usually dealing with two people that, again, in this case, neither client needs to do a transaction. The seller has a slight desire to sell the house, but not a need. He's pretty wealthy and could just keep the house, but he has 3 houses in different areas. He has a house in San Diego and a house in Palm Springs, and he said, I don't need to sell the house, but I'm almost never here. So if an offer makes sense, he's like, I'll take it. So now we have to go to work on, can the buyer pay the price the seller's willing to sell, and can we keep it together long enough to arrive at a contract? So it could come together, it could not. But now we've solved that issue. We have the inventory, we have the buyer who's willing to buy. Now we found a seller with another listing agent. So that's the beauty of it, is it's just me and my agent, and we're dealing with the buyers and sellers, so we can negotiate both sides. But even then, I'm not certain that I can put this deal together, but we're going to try. And that's sort of the thing with getting into the price point, is now these clients expect you to be able to put the deals together and put the pieces together, and their expectations of you too is that you're a higher, stronger negotiator. But I will also say, once you do this for a client, like even the client that I'm talking about, the buyer that we're working with on this, he's like, don't worry. He's like, I'm going to refer you everybody, because when you go find them a house that's not on the market, when you do what other agents aren't willing to do, that referral clout and the people are willing to recommend you for, they'll say, okay, well, like, use Ian because he did this. Look what he did for me, and he's willing to do these extra things. And he'll tell the same client has referred me people, and he goes, oh no, he goes, don't worry. He's like, if you can't find your house, Ian will just go. If you like a house, Ian will go knock on there. It's true. I've gone and knocked on $5 million, $8 million houses. Buzz the buzzer. Hey, will you sell your house? So
Ian, I have a question for you, actually. So have you found that you get more business in the luxury market via referrals, or through a lot of that relationship building that you mentioned earlier, through the networking, the going to the country club, and organically building those relationships that way?
it's similar. I would say I don't know if I wouldn't say, I don't know if I have a percentage. I have to look.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not really asking.
It's a little of both. Initially, if you haven't done a lot of luxury, you're not going to get as many referrals. You're going to get them through the relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
As time goes on and you do more business, you'll get more referrals. So it's hard to get somebody to refer you business when they haven't, especially in the luxury price point, when they haven't experienced it. Now, if they've seen, it is one thing if they've seen you do stuff. So I've gotten referrals kind of in periphery because people know what we do, and they're like friends who will say, oh yeah, no, and like they know somebody else, and they say, oh no, like if you're buying in Los Gatos, you're buying in Saratoga, Museum, or if you're need to sell your house, like they'll refer me. But largely, until you have sort of some reputation or some clout, it's harder to get the luxury referrals. That's where that relationship building is so key. So I think initially, but what's the goal we all have is to have a very strong referral business. Mm-hmm. Like the personal referral is the best client because they just go with you. The strong personal referral. They're the listings that we sign at 99% sign rate. For someone who's warmly referred you. Same thing with the buyers. They don't stray. They don't stray the same way. Whereas a stranger, you never know because they don't have a personal. And then if you meet a stranger, we've all had this experience. Is you everything's great, and you have but it's someone who's a stranger or a Zillow lead or online lead or something, and then they end up ditching you for like a close relationship out of obligation. So, and we even had it. I've had clients that said, "Oh, I should have used you." But I had to use my sister-in-law because it was family or whatever the reason. So we've all had that situation. Whereas like the warm referral kind of undercuts all that because you're the warm referral and it's like, oh no, you've kind of cut through and now you are the personal relationship. So we all much prefer to have the warm referrals, I think, and that's the direction we want to go. But when your goal, and I said the name of the mastermind is how to triple your price point. So it's like when your goal is to triple your price point, your goal is just to start getting bigger deals. So whatever that, and I say. Intention is a huge thing with this. So whatever, it's the whole thing. My first mentor, Tom Ferry, says it all the time too. It's like whatever you focus on expands. So if you're focused on raising your price point, then you will raise your price point. If you make a goal out of it, my goal is, and so you have to be somewhat realistic. You have to look at your marketplace. That's another mistake people make too, is they say, I want to sell this kind of property. And then if I ran analytics on your market, I'm like, well, you want to sell $10 million properties, but there's like one of $10 million property or no $10 million properties that sell each year in your marketplace. So you have to be realistic. Okay. So, if luxury in your market is 2 million, also look at like, okay, how many, so a $2 million house sold. And then you're like, well, how many $2 million properties are available to sell? And then so you can project a realistic market share of that property. So to raise your price point, but if you're like, so I said, for different marketplaces, if you're in a $300,000 average, or like an average home's $300,000 and luxury is $1 million, but there may be 3 or 4 or $5 million properties, but you really should focus on the $1 million properties because there's so few $5 million properties. They're like once in a blue moon. Because then what will happen is if you're the $1 million agent in the market, you have a shot at getting that potential $5 million house because there's only one. So they're going to hire the agent that does all the $1 million houses because you're the one doing all the other expensive properties, and you'll probably have a chance at getting that property too.
That makes sense. What, in your opinion, you've kind of touched on this already, but in your opinion, what is one thing that agents could do today that would kind of start them on this path towards breaking into the luxury market and to being able to triple their price point from there?
Well, I'll give 3. The first one, get your database in order. And if your database doesn't have potentially luxury clientele or higher price point clientele, then dig deeper and figure out who you could put on that. So again, your database marketing, your sphere marketing, make sure that you have some clientele on there that are in the higher end. If you can't even get anybody, then you got to go to technique number 2, which is look at your interests, look at your hobbies, figure out where you're going to meet some people with higher price points. So if you want to sell more expensive real estate, you need to hang out with people who make more money or have more money. So and then you gotta make a plan. And again, I don't know where everyone's markets are. I mean, but depending on where your market is, you'll figure out. You think about where are the wealthier people in your marketplace, and make a plan to meet more wealthy people. If you don't have a connection or can't somehow connect or meet the clients, you'll never do business with them. So you have to figure out how to find the people, meet the people where they're at. Is what I'd say. So the number two is you got to figure out where the luxury clientele, what do they do, what are their hobbies, and again, every market could be a little different. In almost every market, things I named, golf, expensive cars, expensive car clubs, like I said, wine's one of mine. If you're in a boat market or yacht clubs, so there's always these places that are like obvious places that people with more money hang out. But there's a lot more out there, and pick the one that you actually would want to do. So you got to build your database of people that have more money, because again, this is a belly to belly personal business. We're not selling phone plans to thousands of people. We're as realtors, we're paid large amounts of money on single transactions. And some ultra luxury agents that I know who make big 7-figure incomes are doing less than 20 transactions a year. Maybe they're doing 10 or 15 transactions a year. They're just really big transactions that are making a lot of money. So it's not about having a massive database. It's about having tripling your price point is about the quality of your database. And I don't mean in terms of quality of people. I mean in terms of quality of their income. I used to say for me, I said when it comes to selling real estate, I only discriminate on the color green. Have you got that? Great. So how much money someone has.
It took me a second, and then it hit me.
Yeah. No, I mean, and technically, fair housing says the only thing we're allowed to discriminate on is the color green. It's credit scores and it's money. I mean, that's it. We're not. Everything else is a violation of fair housing. You can't race, religion, familial status, all off limits, but we can check their credit score, and depending on what it is, realtors, we don't check their credit score, but we hear from the lender. But it's credit scores and it's income statements and stuff that tell them whether or not they get the loan. So our basis of deciding on a client, you're not, if you knew a client, if a client says, hey, I want to go see this $8 million house, and you found out that they're pre-approved for $2 million, you wouldn't show them an $8 million house. So that's again where we go. Whereas I would happily take out any, I have clients that could buy $15 million houses. They're shopping in the $8 million range. Okay, I'll show that client all day long. They're going to buy something. So that's kind of the big thing there, is to build your database of clients who have the ability to buy more expensive properties, and then spend as much time with them as you can. Get to know these people better, and that's it. I mean, again, it's like any other thing. It's building a database. It's building a referral network of people that know, like, and trust you, that have the ability to buy and sell properties in these price ranges. What was my third one? Know your inventory, up your skills. So the third thing is go out, tour luxury properties. You got to know them, and it doesn't matter if you're representing buyers or sellers. I get luxury listings because I know the inventory, and I could talk about every house. And it's funny because sellers who own high-end homes and are thinking about selling their high-end homes, and these are usually in our market, especially because we're in Silicon Valley, we're tech. These are highly educated, advanced degrees, and some of these people have been the CEOs of companies and stuff. So they're analytical, they're smart, they know what their house is like, and then they're looking at the other houses. So when you're talking to when you're going on a listing appointment to list a luxury house, they're going to know what the house down the street sold for and why. Oftentimes they know if and some of them, some people are delusional about their house, but a lot of them know if their house is better or worse than that house. They know the finishes, they know the lot. Okay, well, I have a really flat lot and they have more of these slopes. And so if you go to try to list that house and you can't speak intelligently about the market, and it's a lot more powerful if you've seen the house down the street that sold for the price that they're basing off. Because in their minds, the other thing is, if you walk in and the guy says, hey, I think I want $7 million for my house, and you're like, yeah, this thing's 5.5. You can't say that unless you can articulate why. And if you're like, well, the house that sold for 7 had these features and these finishes, and this was how the lot was, and this is what you, if you can't articulate it, then you can't have them on. You can't have an intelligent pricing discussion. And you see that sometimes with, when somebody gets in, or they're a relative, happens a lot in luxury. A relative lists the house, way overprices it, and then it doesn't sell. And then another agent, like a well-known agent that understands the market, comes in, prices it the right price, and gets it sold. So that's the third thing. So it's really, like I said, the three things you do: the basics, just having your database, your marketing in order. Then B, figure out how you're going to add higher end clientele to your database. And then third, it's understand and know your inventory super well. You have to be an expert, and it becomes, you can't just, it's so hard to comp some of these luxury homes just off the MLS. And we were having this conversation with this one I was showing this morning. I was talking to the seller. He had it listed with an agent who's been around a long time, 5 years ago. Pictures were terrible. Because we were surprised. Me and my agent went last night, and we previewed it and met with the seller and talked the business side of things, and all that worked out pay and worked out commission and everything. And he goes, and we commented that his house looks a lot better. It was a lot better than the pictures. And it just shocks me that sometimes, so if I had seen, and to be honest, I've had made sales because I went on Broker Store and the listing looked terrible online. And so I said to the client, hey, should we go see this house? Let's go see this house down the street. He's like, I don't like that house. I'm like, no, I've seen the house. The pictures are terrible. Let's go. And then they bought the house. So, and because the pictures and the listing were putting off all the other buyers, how many buyers didn't go see this great house because this agent had a terrible listing, had terrible media? So that's another magic trick to actually knowing your inventory and seeing all the houses, is you can tell. And we do the magic in the opposite, because I pride myself on having really great photos, really great videos, really good drone shots, everything. So we have the opposite. So I sometimes get more people to come see a house that's not as good. But guess what? We still sell that. We end up breaking a record or selling the house for more money. We get the seller more money because we did a better job with the listing.
That was going to be one of my follow-up questions too, was just asking, between luxury and, I guess what would you call the opposite of luxury? Just like the general market. Between those different types of listings, how much more marketing preparation, just time and effort kind of goes into each of those things? Or have you gotten to the point where it's become a much more streamlined process?
Well, it depends. There's layers, right? So we call, I kind of break things into how we treat condos and townhomes and very more entry level for us. And then how we treat kind of your standard single family. So in my market, your average single family is between 1.5 and 2 million, or higher end market. So that's our average houses. So we have a good marketing budget. So we do on a $1.5, $2 million single family home, which I know for some people is luxury. We do media, video, drone shots. We do a full suite of marketing and media. That is a more standard streamlined process. So when I do a listing presentation, I go through I do all that. So then when we if we jump to the next price point, which for us, I call luxury 5 million plus. Mm-hmm. So, so for most markets. Now, if I go a little further out, if I go to South County, I go a little more rural, then luxury might be more 3 million plus. Mm-hmm. Every market's a little more specific, but in my immediate market, luxury is 5 million plus. And then I start to consider ultra luxury 8 or 10 million plus, just depending. So you get ultra luxury, we have that more. For that, we don't serve that as much because I got to go to the peninsula. That's Palo Alto, Woodside, Menlo. Averaging most expensive zip code in the country, one of the world, is just north of us. So that's not my main market I serve. I'd love to sell there, but I'm not from there. I didn't grow up there. I don't have a network. So I'm not saying I will never sell there, but I've never focused on it, and it's a little far for me. So we have Silicon Valley, we have a lot of traffic. So it would be living in Long Beach and trying to sell, northern, Beverly Hills or something. So for us, we so for us, like I break those segments. So if I had ultra luxury, that's a very different marketing plan. And those sellers, they might want us, and those things could take a long time to sell. That we might be putting in like luxury magazines and doing that kind of stuff. We're going to do everything we do for the lower end listings. We're going to have the great photos and media videos, and we probably do a more robust video. We might have more of like a crew. We might even bring in. I haven't done this I haven't done it in a long time. But if I got a $15 million listing tomorrow, we might bring in actors or something, and have like one of those like ultra luxury videos. The other thing we have had a lot of success with anything that's kind of like 5 million plus. We do parties. So I do a couple of different parties. So it's a great way to get your database and sphere going too. So we'll typically do 2 parties. I'll do like a party where I invite all the realtors and everything, and then I do another party where we invite like everybody we know, our database, and we do it for like our clientele. So it's a good way to show off what you do to your clientele. And we don't just invite our luxury clientele; we invite all our clientele. So and it's a good way because everybody has to look at their market. But the way I look at it, if I have a client that I sold a $2 million house to, I'm in the Silicon Valley. These people get stock options. They work for tech companies. They get promotions. So it's not uncommon for the client that I sold a $2 million house to 5 to 7 years ago to potentially start looking at 4 or 5 more expensive properties. So I want them to know that I'm still around and that, hey, I do these kind of properties too. So then, so we invite them. We'll get catering and stuff. Like the last one I did was on a hillside view property, which was about 5 million. And we got a valet service because their parking wasn't a good situation. Brought in like sushi catering, did like a wine. We didn't do a full bar. We did like wine and beer. Had drinks. Had a bunch of appetizers and food. And just and then we had like artists come in, and we got like my former assistant who's not with us and who left on to do other things, but she had been like in the arts and stuff. So she got a bunch of artists, like she'd gone to a local university, and so she got a bunch of like artists and stuff. And we called some other ones we knew, and they brought and displayed art. It's a big house, and they brought art and easels and stuff. And then we walked around, and it was a good way to promote the house. So we've done really well with that as well, and it's good, both good for selling the house and getting more clientele.
Wow. So yeah, no, it kind of acts as a double-edged sword too, and then that also gives you the chance to kind of again get your name out, build those connections to people that may not be familiar with you, and
it wasn't that expensive to do. Again, my budget permitting, you got to look at the budget of the listing, and it would probably be cost prohibitive on a $2 million listing if luxury for you is $2 million. You got to pick and choose. But for us on like a $5 million house, it's not, the catering is not that expensive. We have, to bring in sushi and to bring in that. So, we're talking, I don't know, the party probably cost us under $2,000, maybe $1,500. It was not that expensive.
Wow.
The valet service was surprisingly inexpensive. Anything. The valet service, I'm trying to remember, it was only a few hours. It was like $600. And then the catering, and then I have in my wine cellar, I have boxes of wine that I already own that I bought for various events. Because what we found is we do wine, we'll do like wine and cheese open houses and stuff, and we go through a lot less wine. We always have a lot of wine in case we get blown out, but we always have more wine than we need. So I end up I always have wine so I don't end up having to rebuy the alcohol. So we usually, we do that, and then I have like boxes of like the canned cocktails. I don't drink them, but I have these like canned cocktails, so we can just grab whatever we need. It's like easy stuff that we can throw for parties. And when we do parties here at the office and stuff too, we do the same thing. We just bring out, it's the same alcohol, so we're not like rebuying alcohol every event. And then the finish, just the food is the thing we have to get fresh every time. And we could do catering. We do Whole Foods sometimes. We do one of the local sushi places does good like sushi platters. Those aren't that expensive. And then we found like Whole Foods platters are like one of the best, most cost effective like they do cheese platters, everything, and $300 we can get a bunch of Whole Foods platters, and it ends up working out for like the cheese table. And then we'll do some other like fresher catering.
I'm actually genuinely shocked by this, because I was thinking as you were talking about some of these parties and things that you'd be throwing for like open houses and whatnot, that it would be costing anywhere from like around like $5,000 or something like that. But no, you guys are able to be really cost effective with that.
we tried to call like local caterers, like hiring caterers, and those were ridiculous. And then I looked at like the Whole Foods menu, and I'm like, oh well, I just have one of my and we just usually ask like we have a lot of junior agents that are always looking to help a hand and stuff. So I was like, hey, I asked one of the agents, can you mind swinging through and picking up the food on the way in? And like, oh, no problem. And they go and they get the platters and bring them, and because it's like that's like the self-serve like cheese trays and stuff.
Yeah,
easy. And then like same thing with the sushi platters, we put tongs and like plates out. And then we usually I'll have somebody, like I said, I'll have one of my agents or somebody will man the bar. Or I'll man the bar sometimes because it's a good place to talk to people. We just kind of like one of us mans the bar, does something, and we just kind of work. We found a way to be more cost effective. So I'd rather throw a handful of, I'd rather throw like 2 or 3 of these parties. So if I could, if the parties cost me $1,500, I could do for the same price. I could do 3 of them, and I could do one where I invite all the local realtors, like almost like a brokerage tour. And we've done like the catered brokerage tour thing. That's good in the luxury price points as well. And then the same thing in the with the clientele part, with the client parties. Long run, we've gotten a lot more repeat and referral business from inviting the clients, of course. But the broker's tour is important to try to sell the house, and to do something like, again, sometimes the little sort of dirty little secret of it is you got to do a lot of song and dance for these higher end listings to like make sure the seller knows you're doing stuff too. So you can't, it's hard to justify your pay and everything if you're not doing everything, if you're not doing all these things. Now, I could do like a minimal, I could probably sell an ultra luxury house by doing like a minimalist approach where I just pick out like, these are the very specific things that are targeted that will probably sell the house. We got to do a little extra because, we are doing a little bit of a, song and dance, and the sellers, they like, especially at the higher end sellers, they want to know that you're doing more.
They want to know that you're providing a little bit more of like a unique experience, a bit of a personal touch to it. Yeah.
They're paying you well. They want you to do extra. They want these extras. And again, not all these extras are going to specifically directly lead to selling the house. But the sellers like to see all that, and then they do result in repeat referral business. For me, having an office that we're always recruiting agents for too, it helps us with the recruiting of agents to the company. So there's a lot of reasons too that for me, like I like to do this stuff and sponsor those parties for agents. Is people are like, oh, we like what you're doing. I'm like, well, you should come check us out. Maybe you can always talk if are you looking to make a change. And that's a way we can get it. We can get some quality agents who would want to come join Trajectory too.
Absolutely. It really comes all full circle. All of these things are kind of tied to everything else. And so, that's awesome. I definitely didn't know about really any of this, but.
Well, so for things that I could go and drone on about, that's what I got on this subject, but I'm happy to answer questions if anybody else has more questions. But that's kind of that was sort of my main, but if you have more, Isla, if Catherine or William or anybody else in here has questions, feel free to chime in.
Francis, do you have any questions? Yasmin? All right. I guess we don't have any questions for today, but this session is being recorded, so agents will be able to come back and view this talk on the Rooms platform.
And so, anybody in here, feel free to reach out if you guys have questions. We have kind of more of a quieter group, but hopefully you guys got something out of this. But I'm always happy to respond and answer. You can find me on Instagram. I think it's like Ian_Batra. You can find me on social media, Facebook, or you can find me if you Google my name, stuff will pop up. You can see that, or just shoot me Ian at Trajectory RE. You can email me. I'm happy to dialogue with people, or if you have a question, I'm always willing to give an idea or help out for agents when they reach out. I appreciate people joining these things.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Ian, for coming to speak to us today. We always appreciate having you in Rooms and learning from your expertise. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope you all have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.